Heretic is directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods and stars Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, Chloe East, and among others. And this story deals with these two Mormon missionaries who end up going door to door, and they end up going to Hugh Grant's home. And if you've seen from the trailers, essentially they get invited in, and they start to notice that some things aren't as they seem, as they see that this. They think that there's someone else in the house with them because they can only go inside his house if there's another woman present, and pretty much it goes into a test of faith as these two girls are having to they get the chance to leave, but they have to go through one of these two doors. One is a belief or disbelief, and Hugh Grant basically challenges them while also getting into some twists and turns I won't get into. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who also wrote The Quiet Place, and they also directed Hunt from a few years ago. And I remember really enjoying Hunt, and going into the trailers of this, that got me really interested because it seems like we've been on this trend where Hugh Grant has been taking roles outside of his usual, like he used to. Because if you remember back in the day, he used to be always in a lot of those rom-coms, in like the 90s and stuff, and in the early 2000s. And ever since he did movies like Cloud Atlas and some other stuff that I've seen lately with the Gentleman stuff, and even last year with Dungeons and Dragons, I'm glad to see that he's taken other different type of roles where he's no longer the kind of romantic type of guy like we used to see anymore. He's going definitely outside of his realm to play these against type of performance like this. And from the trailers, I got me really interested because from the looks of it, it kind of seems like they were kind of taking a realm similar to like probably the Saw movies, mixed in with like something like a cult movie or something. Like because you're really kind of questioning like exactly what Hugh Grant's character is all about, and they keep it very mystery about his character. And so, after upon seeing the film, I can say that this movie really was everything that I wanted it to be. It was so fantastic in a lot of ways that really surprised me, and also really challenged me as a viewer too, because this is kind of getting into a little off topic, but it seems like whenever we get in these type of movies like Midsummer or these other type of I don't really like to use that term elevated horror, but these type of movies that do something beyond what we see with traditional horror films, I like that it builds into that ambiguous type of level that I like to see, and the way it also plays into with not only as the viewer, but also the way that the characters are thinking throughout the film, because this is definitely one of those kind of movies that's not your traditional type of horror film. It is a lot more psychological, as it really goes into the realms of Hugh Grant essentially testing these two Mormons, but also in a way doing a 180 where they're basically testing him on certain things. So I like how that to get into my pros, I really enjoyed the way that it really plays into that, because of the way we're able to see that he's basically used like all these different type of metaphors and stuff about how each religion comes from like the same source, but they basically copy certain things. Like, not going to go into too much detail, but when he brings up stuff that has to do with like Monopoly or even Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, he uses these kind of metaphors in a very clever way that it really kept me engaged with the dialogue, because the way that it plays it out with him pretty much trying to, test the two Mormons' faith and how they see things. And then when they get into the actual stuff that goes down, the second half especially, that's when it gets into some really crazy, really interesting territory that I find myself not only very on the edge for, but also felt like it felt like I was really seeing how the story played along, but with how much these two girls are having to not only try to escape, because it also keeps adding more stakes on top of it, where they pretty much can't get out and have to rely on some of their wits, or they have to outsmart Hugh Grant in a lot of ways that even he actually has to question. So, to get more of my pros, I thought the performances were all fantastic in this. Hugh Grant really knocked it out of the park with not only playing an against type of role that I've never seen him before, but also just the way that he kind of comes across as very nice and like very kind of conniving, where it's like he doesn't want to do what he's doing, but it's like he really is like a gentleman type of approach. That's not only creepy of its own, but it's just he's like basically he's like a creepy gentleman, if that's the word. It's kind of the role. I don't want to say that this would be would better suit for him, but it's like a role that like you see like Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards, or those type of performances. The way Christoph Waltz does in his kind of movies, where he's very nice and very suave and everything, but there's just something about him where he's very unhinged, and I just really appreciate that with this character in this. Is that Hugh Grant really goes for it, and he even cracks me up at times with some of the metaphors he comes across with at points, and he just really knocked it out of the park with the way that he's really going along with the film. And then the rest of the other two girls, they really great. They did really great too. Sophie Thatcher, who I've actually become an enjoy of a lot of things that she's done, like last year where she did the Boogeyman. I also hear that she's also good in that show, Yellow Jackets as well. Like she's becoming a really great actress in her own right, and she really knocks out of the park with kind of the one that's more of like really questioning the things at first and all that. And then you have Chloe East's character that's really more of the more like the more believer of her faith and everything that. She's really kind of skeptic on some of the stuff that's at first, but then also tries to go along with Sophie Thatcher's things after she's noticing some stuff. So it really does play the dynamic very well with them too. And I also got to really appreciate the cinematography in this, the way it's all in this kind of darkly lit house and everything. And the house itself is kind of a character in its own right because in a way it was kind of reminding me of elements of something like well. To some elements with like the House on Haunted Hill remake, but also you could kind of put in that very kind of claustrophobic feel, kind of like The Shining in that regard. How each of these kind of different rooms they go into become kind of like a more, they add more layers to the actual stuff itself, where you're seeing just more things that are very unexpected. And I think that that's very good filmmaking. The way it keeps it very unpredictable, as the more and more you get inside the house, it's like you don't really know what to expect. And there may not be like a lot of traditional scares in the most. There may not be like typical scares in the traditional sense, but the atmosphere and a lot of the unsettling stuff they come across later in the second half, I thought really got to me, and it put me in that very like it kept me very engaged and really wondering like where it was going and stuff. And then there's also some real. I gotta really appreciate the soundtrack in this. Not only do they play the Hollies, The Air That I Breathe, but also they even do some like kind of interesting stuff with even doing metaphors with that, with how the song Creep by Radiohead sounds very similar to that song and everything. And so I just really appreciate how the movie just keeps on going and kept me like really challenging me, kind of questioning like some of the stuff that both sides are pretty much getting in, that both Hugh Grant and the girls are really getting into as it goes along. And on top of that, I will say too that even though there's some stuff in the ending that I do kind of question at the same time, I still thought it still worked in its own regard because it was able to still have a great payoff that I really enjoyed. On top of that, I got to really also give it props to the way that we get into some pretty unexpected territory that not only gets very bloody as hell, but also it just really makes me really, it had me on the edge. Damn, I can't believe that was something that was going to happen. So there is definitely some unexpected stuff that I could see this kind of being, kind of rather working or not working for some people, but it still really got me, and I really was on the edge, especially toward the third act. And so there's more I can go into detail, but I really don't have many flaws with this movie, and the only thing I would kind of say that's a minor thing is that the ending is kind of questionable with some stuff that I was kind of wondering, but it was also at the same time really making me feel like challenged with that because it kind of went on a more ambiguous type of level and had some stuff that really I was wondering if that was if it was kind of basically put me in that mindset of, okay, I can kind of see what they're going for with this, but I have to like really maybe rewatch to get some repeat value to kind of understand like exactly what they were trying to go for. So I appreciate that the movie kept it in that very ambiguous type of level that I really love with a lot of these type of horror films. And so with that, I really enjoyed this movie a lot, and it's going to be one of my favorites of the year, and I'm going to give it a phenomenal grade on the Film Freaks meter. And so for those of you who have also seen Heretic, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.